English Honors. Welcome to your last CommonLit passage for the nonfiction unit. Today you are reading a satire piece called The War Works Hard. For my honor students, your satire piece is actually a poem. So this is very interesting. So you have a relatively short poem here. Gets a little tricky to read, just because poetry usually is, but especially because, like I said, this is a satire piece, which means if you go back to your definitions here, this poem is going to be all about criticizing, shaming individuals, corporations, government, and society itself into improvement. So it's kind of like shaming, passive aggressive written shaming. So you've got your passage here. I kept with the thieves approach, even though this is a poem, just because I want to kind of reiterate this, keep this going with you, because this is the nonfiction unit we've been studying. So The War Works Hard as a title. Obviously, you got some personification there being used. We don't have any headings, but the personification is continued in the first few lines of the introduction, how magnificent the war is, how eager and efficient. Every first line doesn't really apply because these are lines of poetry, so we're just going to skip that one. You've got the visual, the skull on the spike in the ground. And when you think about the way the title is worded, you see this visual and you're thinking about the overall idea of the poem. The war works hard. What exactly are they trying to get at there? What do they mean? The war works hard. And so that's what some of your questions are going to ask you about. You need to understand tone, figurative language, theme, and purpose in this particular text. Understanding that it's a piece of satire is going to help you out with a lot of that. Of course, feel free to go back to the short story or poetry unit to understand those first three if you want to recap and look at those definitions of those literary terms. And then you have, your short answer question, and I will try to pull it up on this side now. Should be, it's question 2. How does the use of personification and imagery contribute to the poet's tone? Use at least 2 pieces of evidence from your text. Guys, please make sure you cite 2 separate lines. Students should discuss how personification of war as a diligent worker, in addition to the numerous yet casually referenced images of war, destruction, help the reader understand the sarcasm. So that contrast, that war is a hard worker, he's a good worker, he's got a good work ethic, and then the travesty of it all, the devastation, the really negative and downside to wars. Because again, in essence, your poem here is criticizing war and criticizing society's participation in war, by contrasting it with the horrible reality that war essentially ends up in death. And that's not something we should be striving for in our day-to-day lives. And that's going to be it for my honor students. So like I said, last nonfiction passage, or last passage for your nonfiction unit, we are getting ready to go into your nonfiction unit test. So make sure this passage gets done, turned in on CommonLit. I will grade everything and have it returned to you by April 29th. And then on April 30th, you need to carve out about 90 minutes because you're going to go ahead and take your nonfiction unit test. And we will go from there. You'll have all access to all the passages. You'll have questions related to each passage. Everything will be nice, pretty, and laid out and labeled like it always is in the test formats. So just make sure you have time dedicated to sit down and completing that test, okay? And that's it.